All right. Nikola is almost perfect. The Nuggets get some situational defense and a two-man game. Actually, three different two-man games that are starting to really take off. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome into Locked On Nuggets, your team every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Nuggets your first listen every day, although today, recording this in the afternoon, the late afternoon schedule just didn't allow for me to do one earlier today solo. Kids home from school, snowstorm, yada, yada, yada. But I'm going to make up for it by doing a detailed notebook on this game. I went back and rewatched it. Usually when we do these shows, when Matt and I are together and we do these shows, I haven't rewatched the game quite yet. It's not until the next day that I get to rewatch it. Got to rewatch it today, took a bunch of detailed notes. And since I'm soloing today, Matt Moore did a solo yesterday, I'll do one today. I wanted to go through and do these detailed notebook notes on the game. And this was a good one to do that for because there's a lot of positives. It's always more fun to do the notebooks when the notes are largely positive. So without further ado, let's get into it. My first note in here, it's underrated, it's underappreciated with Murray how crafty he is as a finisher. The first layup he had of the game was a really Murray-esque shot. And it's funny because some players have specific movements or plays or traits that you can define them by. I think Murray is actually one of those guys where he's not a mold of another player. You say, oh, he's like this. He is in many ways his own mold of player. And one of the defining traits, or one of the most important traits, is just how crafty he is at finishing with footwork. And he had a move where he didn't really beat a guy, but he leans forward and does this inside hand spin off the backboard. And it looked like it was the easiest layup in the world, but it was just great footwork. The defender didn't know he was beat till the very end. And then he realizes, I'm not just beat, I'm really beat. One of those traits of Murray. Damian Lillard's a really bad defender. It's one of my big notes from this game. When we think about players who, Jokic has this label as a great offensive player, but is he good on defense? Bigs get that label more because I think it's more important for bigs to be good defensively. So there's a little bit of things that are fair to it. But I think but Dame, the degree to which he is a bad defender, especially in games like this, it's really damning. I mean, he is as big of a mark as anybody on the Denver Nuggets in terms of when he's on the court, you can attack him and you can take advantage of him. And one of the reasons that I'm not necessarily buying them as a team, the Portland Trailblazers, is they have a combination of offensive talent that they can put next to them. So when you're behind, you can put them on. But then they're really compromised defensively. Like Simons is a bad defender. Dame's an atrocious defender. And then if you put the good defenders out with him, Josh Hart and Gary Payton, well, those guys are so compromised offensively, especially alongside Nurkic, that then they become easier to defend. And you saw that in this game. They had their offensive lineups, but Denver made such light work of them. They went to their defensive lineups, no hope of scoring. And it just kind of shows you, how when you have a player of Dame's caliber, like with Jokic, it's so hard to build the right balanced team around him. The Dame Nurkic pick and roll in particular, Denver was going at them. Denver had a 152 offensive rating in the first half. And a lot of that was both teams trying to play things straight. We're going to put Murray on Dame and we're going to just do these straight up matchups. And for both teams, neither one could guard the other. But for Denver, it was especially true. I thought Dame made some really tough and impressive shots. And he does that. He's a great player. But Denver didn't. Denver didn't make crazy shots in the first half. They just got whatever it is they wanted. Nuggets, their defense has improved. And in the second half, I'm going to talk a lot about their defense in the second half. I thought there were some really impressive things on the tape. One of the things that I think stands out is that they still get confused on compound reads, meaning Denver makes good initial rotations. They make good they're doing this move, we can do this. But when it's you do this thing to set up this thing to set up that thing, the more you can get compounded actions on it, the more I think Denver tends to mess up. And I think that's natural for most teams at this point in the year in January. Now to March is when you start to see teams that can start to make multi-layered reads defensively, multi-layered rotations. And to be honest with you, I thought Aaron Gordon in this game was especially bad at making the secondary reads, the secondary rotations. This was, on second watch, I did not think a great defensive game for Aaron Gordon. And it wasn't that he played bad consistently. It's just that he had 4 or 5 plays that the breakdown came from him. And it wasn't a breakdown from like, oh, he got blown by or this, that. It was, oh, he didn't make the next read. There was a chain of reads, and then he broke the chain, and Denver's defense got compromised. So we know he's a better defender than that, but this was one of those games where I felt like he was the guy that made a couple of the errors there for whatever reason. But that's the thing where Denver's at a level now where we're judging them like we know they can win bad, they can win ugly, they can win pretty. Offensively, their team is starting to like click on lots of different layers. They're already several layers deep. Defensively, I think early in the year, Denver was bad on layer 1. I think like if you went to like the 5 layers of defense, 5 being like elite rotations, championship level, whatever, Denver is probably like at past level 2 now. They're at like level 3, meaning they can make the initial reads and then they can make the secondary reads off of those. But when it starts to get complex and you start to stack different actions on top of each other, I think that's where Denver has to refine themselves. So as we evaluate them from this point forward, knowing that they're already capable of being a number 1 seed in the West, now you want to see, can they start to get to those sequences where they're so connected defensively that they're making multi-layered reads? I'm really curious. Denver runs a lot of actions in the half court where they have a guard and a forward on a side. So it'll be Porter and Murray, and then, KCP on the other side, KCP and Gordon or something like that. I'm curious if Denver, and it's interesting that Michael Malone, he's in health and safety protocols. He'll probably be out for a couple games. My guess is he'll miss tonight's game as well. Denver plays Minnesota on the back-to-back. Friday night, they have a game. Maybe Michael Malone will rejoin them after that. But you get David Adelman, who, by the way, is having himself a moment. Aaron Gordon shouted him out earlier this season. After the game, Nikola Jokic shouted him out and just said, hey, he's going to be a head coach before long. Like, that's how good he is. We're all impressed with him. And so it's kind of interesting just to get a different voice. And I think oftentimes when you get an assistant coach, especially an offensive-minded assistant coach, you get somebody who is tactically proficient. And I think that's what we're seeing with David Adelman, especially as I go back and watch this game. Game plan was very smart. Adjustments were very smart. And the game was very technically sound. Now, that's not all that goes into coaching. And in the short run, those things can, trying to say who will be a good coach at the head coach level is so hard because it's not any one thing. But I do think that based on what the players are telling us, and even just based on what other coaches are telling us, and then, of course, seeing the game last night, I do think that he's going to be a great tactician and that he is a real asset for Denver. One of the things so I was talking about how you put guards and forwards often because Denver's Porter and Gordon in particular, it's so hard for defenses to switch a guard onto a big because then Denver starts to take advantage of them. But I'm kind of interested about what happens when you put Porter and AG on the same side, and you put the 2 guards on the same side, because as much as a switch between a small forward and a power forward is not that big of a deal, most teams will concede that, and it's not like Aaron Gordon has the switch. What I noticed in this game is when Denver went to that, Jokic got the one-on-one. So rather than be more worried about, like, those guys are such good cutters, that it actually just occupied the help. And I thought Jokic going at Nurkic one-on-one was barbecue chicken. And there were a few actions in this game where that's the way the floor balanced. I don't think on purpose, just naturally in transition. And it made me think, well, those guys are so good at cutting off of, like, when teams are switching and spacing, that might be a good way to space the court for Jokic one-on-ones. One of the things Najee does that drives me nuts, Zeke, is that he tries to save the ball on moments when it doesn't need it. He had this the other day, and Jokic kind of gave him one of these where the ball was going out of bounds off the other team, and he jumped out of bounds to try to save it, and then it was out on Denver. He had one last night going into the backcourt where he jumped. He didn't need to do it. He could have just gone in the backcourt and grabbed it. It was tipped. It was deflected. But instead he jumped and tried to save it, and it was almost a turnover. And to me, I think it is actually insightful about one of the things he's struggling with, and that is quick calculations. Not structured, like I'm supposed to do this, here's what I do, but just reading natural rhythms of the game. And some of this is just experience. The more you play, the more those things kind of go fire quickly for you. You get the experience and the pattern recognition. Your brain just automatically in background kind of starts to fire on that. But some players are more more capable of doing those than others. And I think Zeke probably is on the slower scale just based on what I've seen on some of the reads and some of the reaction time and reaction speed and processing power. It seems like he's maybe a little bit slower in those ways. He makes up for it, obviously, with a great skill set, incredible strength, and then his motor has just been incredible. He goes really, really hard. But every player has strengths and weaknesses, and we're starting to see some of his in both directions. Bones, I thought, and this game was pretty interesting. I thought he was actually very good defensively in this game on rewatch. He had 2 steals in the first quarter, a phenomenal closeout using his length, running somebody off in a rotation. He had a phenomenal one-on-one stop on Anthony Simons that forced an air ball. And then he had a couple possessions where he got scored on in isolation. So I think when you add it all up, 2 steals, a forced air ball, and a closeout that forced a miss, that was a really, really good closeout, and then 2 times getting scored on, that's good. For a guy that's more good than negative. And I just thought his focus and attention to detail on the defensive end was a positive one in this game. I thought his offense, though, some games I say that I think that he can be too or that he gets too much criticism for being aggressive because that's what the Nuggets are running. In the second half, I thought that Bones did a very good job of fitting in, and the ball was popping with that second unit. Now, he didn't play very many minutes. He got pulled pretty quickly in that second half. But I don't think it was for offensive, going off out of the lines. First half, I thought defensively he was good, but offensively he took 2 or 3 of them that I was like, that was a little bit forced. He got Simons on him, and I think he was just feeling that matchup. Shots weren't falling, and it was a little too aggressive. I will say, though, that in that first unit, before Murray checked in, so it's the first quarter, Bruce Brown moved to point guard for 1 possession. So you move, I know some people have called for that. Well, maybe get him off ball. Bruce traveled. Just had an unforced turnover in that one. So just kind of an interesting note. But overall, I thought that Bones in this game didn't do the things that usually stick out in the positive way. But I actually thought his defense was subtly pretty good, at least in the first half. Let's take a break here and get to some other notes on here in segment 2 as we get into the second quarter. But first, I want to tell you guys about Prize Picks, the daily fantasy game. You pick between 2 to 6 players, and if they will go score more or less than their Prize Pick projection. So again, this isn't like you're playing against a person or whatever. It's just you look at it and says, oh, Jokic is supposed to go for 28 points tonight. You picked, is he going to go over that? You kind of just pick based on the projections that you think. So it's almost like, DFS mixed with gambling. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf. How do you bet on disc golf? That one's crazy. Eurobasket, cricket, and so much more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. This is not like a complicated thing. It's very, very simple. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. All right, segment 2, Locked On Nuggets podcast. Doing a solo one here. Matt Moore has got the day off. Let me see what copy I've got from you. Oh, yes, Locked On Sports. We appreciate you making this your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On Sports today. The biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less. It's like ESPN News back in the day. We got Locked On Sports, which gives you the quick recap of everything that's going on. Instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On Takes of the Day. Locked On Sports today. Available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's get back into these notes here. Let's see. Vlatko can be very impactful as a role player by just being solid. He was bad offensively in this game, and he made a couple weird reads. But I thought defensive sequences, he had a couple where he just had great, solid closeouts, containments, and didn't do anything fancy. But he just said, I'm not letting them get easy things. If they hit hard shots, so be it, but I'm not letting them get easy things. And there was a sequence in particular in that first half that really stood out to me in that way where he made a good switch. First of all, they had a switch that was KCP and Vlatko guarding Simons and Jeremy Grant. You switch that so that KCP goes on Jeremy Grant, Simons gets Vlatko Cancar. And who do you think that Portland decided to attack? They decided to attack KCP. They liked the size mismatch, big versus little, than they did Simons, who's really tough cover against Vlatko Cancar for whatever reason. So it tells you at least that there's a little respect there for Vlatko's ability to kind of stick out on the perimeter. Jokic is getting better and better at picking when to do his hard cut. This is something that he's added over the last 2 years, the off-ball scoring. And AG is really great at finding him. So a lot of it is you pass to AG on the corner and you have options. I'm going to go this way to set a screen. I'm going to walk to a post up. And if the defense sags or gets on their heels, Jokic will cut really, really hard and just catch it and then go up for the layup. And those types of plays, off-ball cutting into an attack, is especially important when going up against Jusuf Nurkic. If you remember 2 years ago in the playoffs, one of the reasons Denver won the series was because Jokic worked in quarters 1, 2, and 3 to get Nurkic in foul trouble. Then in quarter 4, he fouls out and Denver took over. I think Nurkic ended up a positive in that series. I mean, Denver was very shorthanded, but Nurkic ended up a positive in that series. But every game followed the same path. Just keep chipping wood, get Nurkic in foul trouble, and then at the end of the game when he goes out, go on like a 15-5 run and really punish him. The easiest way to get Nurkic in foul trouble, and it's not just Nurkic, it's other big lumbering bigs who maybe can handle you in the post or on the elbow when you're stagnant, is to get mobile, to get on the move. And Jokic has gotten so good at this. So I thought Portland can present some difficulties. There's no question about it. One of the reasons I would feel very confident about Denver going up against them is I think Denver can get Jokic on the move anytime they want. And I don't think Nurkic can guard anywhere close to a high enough level on Jokic to keep things interesting. I think he would foul out whenever Denver wants. And I think there are specific things you can do to put Portland in a bind that there's just no answer for. Meaning you're either going to let Jokic shoot 12 of 13 from 2 or whatever it was, 13 of 14, whatever. I can't even remember what the number was. Either you're going to let Jokic do that or you're going to foul out, or maybe both, which is what happened in this last game. Nurkic got in foul trouble in the first half. He didn't end up fouling out, but he got in foul trouble, and Jokic didn't miss any shots. That's how dominant and how comfortable Denver is with that specific matchup. And it's central to everything they do. Because on the other end, one of the things Denver does is trap Damian Lillard. I mean, Damian Lillard was going off, but one of the things you're going to do is trap Lillard up high, force the passes to Nurkic on the short roll, and then dare Nurkic to make plays out of there, whether they're scoring plays against a rotating helper or whether that's just reading the open pass. And Nurkic did a poor job in this one. I mean, he was horrible at scoring. He scored 6 points in the first 5 minutes of this game and did not score again for the rest of the game. Missed a bunch of bunnies. But then even turning it over, he had a handful of turnovers and just missed reads, missed plays where he didn't maximize the 4-on-3 opportunity. And it's just when Denver's able to score on you at that level, Nurkic is going to have to be able to keep up, and he was nowhere close in this game. And Denver did a good job of meeting him high. Denver's had a lot of experience. If you go back to the bubble, this is one of the ways that they won the bubble. They started saying, okay, Donovan Mitchell's killing us. It's compromising to put 2 on ball and trap 35 feet from the basket because you have 4-on-3 with all the space. But let's just see if Gobert has enough bandwidth to be able to make those plays, and he didn't. Denver has a lot of experience with this group, or at least the core of this group, doing these things. And I think this is the best unit they've ever had at being able to do those. Aaron Gordon has gone through this now for a couple of years. Michael Porter's seen this for a couple of years. Jokic obviously has. So I think that is an adjustment that there are players. DeAndre Ayton might be this guy in a playoff series. Denver's going to dare. They're going to jump out on screens like that and dare the big to be able to make reads. And I think Denver has a lot of reps doing that exact thing. Aaron Gordon is so good at attacking people's shoulders in the post. He just goes over your left shoulder and you move. Go to your right shoulder and you move. Go to your left shoulder and you move, and then spin and dunk on you. He just gains 2 feet of space on every attack. And then next thing you know, it's just like mano-a-mano. We're in the paint. Let's just both go up and see who's stronger. And it's him 99.9% of the time. Each player on the Nuggets roster, I love this because the 2-man game between Jokic and everyone else is just going up and up. Every player has their own shot that they get with Jokic. For KCP, it's the dribble handoff pin down, right? They don't go to this all the time, although they'll call it maybe once or twice a game deliberately, okay, we're just running this. But KCP, even in the flow of the offense, there's 5-8 seconds left on the clock or whatever, and Jokic has it. If KCP's in the corner and they run, KCP knows he's going to run into that one, turn the corner to get to that 15-foot, maybe 10 to 15-foot handoff into a jumper, and that's his shot. And he's gotten so good at it that's a shot that he was good at to begin with. But when you're playing with Jokic and you see the rhythms going, you start to go oh, okay, in this sequence, I know we can simplify the game to where I only have to make one read. Is the defense chasing me? Is a big step up, okay, drop it to Jokic. If not, just go right into my shot. And that's his shot. And it's so cool because everybody, Aaron Gordon has different reads with Jokic that if we do this, then this. Bruce Brown has those. If you do this, then this. And it's just fun to see because I think this is the most we've ever had players that are both good defensively and who offensively each have their own little way of playing the two-man game with Jokic. And it's a big reason why Nikola is currently averaging almost 10 assists a game. The Blazers, a quick note, the Blazers have an analytics section in their broadcast where they go to a guy in a suit who looks like he's in the you know how ESPN does the like referee replay booth where like the referee he's in this like room with all the televisions. The Blazers have one of those, only it's for analytics, and I really hate it. I just don't think I've watched their broadcast on Synergy, which is how I rewatch games. Sometimes it'll give me the away feed. I've seen it a handful of times, and it's such a, to me, it's almost like a sideline report, but instead of the sideline, it's like analytics. It's just, to me, it doesn't seem to fit. It doesn't seem to fit. I'm not a big fan of it. KCP is so good. One of his underrated traits, he's so good at breaking on transition defense at a really, really quick speed. And he had a steal off of Damian Lillard where Damian Lillard got the ball, thought he was throwing it ahead to somebody, but KCP had zero lag. The moment the ball turned over or the moment they grabbed the ball, he starts sprinting back. And he has just a quick first jump on reads like that. And it's an underrated skill. He does this on transition. He does this on transition defense, matching up. He just is so great. I was talking about Zeke Naji earlier and how sometimes he's slow to do that. KCP is the opposite of this. He reads like, oh, it's time to go from this to that. He reads it so insanely quick that it's crazy. Another reason that I think that Denver matches up very well with Portland in a playoff series, and actually why I don't think Portland makes it out of the first round this year. There's a lot of season left, trade season, and we'll see what they do. But they had two players that Denver just was unbothered by. One is my guy, Gary Payton. I think Gary Payton's one of the best defenders in all of the NBA, especially on the perimeter. But offensively, he's rough. And Denver treated him like he was Matisse Thybulle. They did the same thing to Josh Hart, who's in a bit of a shooting slump right now, but he's shooting almost 33% on the season and in his career. And yet Denver just didn't guard him. They were very content when he was on the court to run out at him, meaning they weren't just letting him shoot wide open ones. They would run out, get a handout or whatever, but they did not respect him as a realistic offensive weapon. And over the course of a game, he didn't punish them. And that's one reason why Denver, if you can't slow down Denver at all, Denver's going to have a 122 offensive rating. If those two teams matched up in the playoffs, I think Denver would score over 120 points per 100 possessions, which is absurd. That would be an absolutely absurd thing to do in a playoff series. I think Denver would do it. I don't think that Portland would be able to do that. Dame would go off. He might average 40 points, might average 35. He would go off. But they would not be able to keep pace because they have these anchors that they have to play to give themselves a chance defensively, and they would just have these anchors. Murray made a lot of deflections in this game, including a couple steals just by using his length. This was a great game for aggregate length. I actually thought Denver's defense overall was very good. Aaron Gordon stood out as the bad one, but I thought overall Denver actually played some good defense outside of a few pockets. Jokic's transition defense was not very good in this game. But Denver, I thought in the half court, their length really shined, and that was in particular Michael Porter and Jamal Murray in this one, where Jamal, he's such a competitor, man. There was several times where he's guarding Dame, who's a little bit smaller anyway to begin with, and he's just like crouched down reading him, and as soon as Dame would make the pass, he would like spring out and steal it. He was just in his bag, I thought, in this game in terms of like reading what was going on. Let's take another quick break here. I got to get to another break, but on the other side, we'll wrap up the notes and talk about the fourth quarter. First, I want to tell you about Bet Online, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at Bet Online as well. Always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right. Back here, segment 3, wrapping up on a notebook pod. Talking about the Nuggets, sort of a beatdown, to be honest with you. This was a comfortable win. I would call this an easy win on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like a grinded out, down to the wire, whatever, 1 being like you just smacked a exhibition team or something like that. This was like a 3, maybe a 4. I mean, this was an easy game for the Denver Nuggets. And yes, Lillard went off, but that tells me, I saw some Blazers analysts and people saying, oh, Portland just missed shots tonight. That's, I feel good about this one. For me, as watching it from a Denver's perspective, I thought this was such light work for Denver. even if they made more shots, I just felt like Denver had so many more things that they could go to down this one. So, including, and this brings me to the next point in my notebook, KCP missed 2 easy layups in a row at a moment when Denver was making the run. Denver perfectly timed the third quarter. It's like, okay, time to turn it on. Let's go. KCP, Jokic had a great 2-man game going, slipped to the basket. One, under the basket on Dame, he goes up and just misses the layup. The other one, even more open, he wasn't even on anybody. There was nobody near. Layup, and I've never seen this actually at the NBA level. Layup, and it didn't even hit the rim. It just hit the backboard and came off 2 feet from the basket. It was the worst layup miss I've ever seen. But I'm more encouraged just by the fact that it was like, hey, those guys are really have something going well. They're working well together. And then I posted a bunch of clips on Twitter at Adam_Matas. If you don't follow me, I posted like 7 or 8 clips. Usually I'll do the list. Didn't have time for that today with the kids being home and having to shovel the walks and all these different things. But I did put them on Twitter because I still was linking to them. And there was a great KCP Jokic one. And what I liked about it in particular was it looked like Murray. Murray has a couple things he loves to do with Jokic, and one of them is off of a dribble pitch, like Murray will pitch it to Jokic, cut off of him, pitch it right back, and Murray will turn the corner as hard as he can and then pass it backwards. So it's almost like he's sprinting like he's going to the basket, but before he ever does anything, he just pitches it back. And the reason he does that is because often the big will hedge for a second, and if you get that pass back quickly to Jokic, there's not enough time for the big to recover, and the guard will just switch on. So it's a way of a dribble pitch and pitch back in a quick enough way that it forces the defense or it tricks the defense into switching. KCP had one of these yesterday, and it was incredible. You'll all remember the finish to the play. It was the one where I think it was Simons, who was guarding KCP at the time. It switches out onto Jokic, and Jokic kind of bodies him, and it like knocks him back like 5 feet. He just knocked him 5 feet, and then he hits the little soft floater. That was the play. It all started with KCP literally mimicking something that Jamal Murray does, and then it turning into points. Why is this such a big deal? Murray already does that. Aaron Gordon already has a phenomenal 2-man game. I put it on Twitter. I think Jokic and Murray and Jokic and Gordon are probably 2 of the top 10 2-man games in all of the NBA. Every combination you have out there, those 2 guys working together, I'm not saying the 2 best players, just working together, like how well do they read each other, the chemistry of how well they read each other. Jokic KCP is growing very, very quickly. I suspect that by the end of the year, and certainly by next year, I think the KCP Jokic 2-man game is going to be like Will Barton levels or higher. And we think of KCP more as an off-ball, finish-the-play type guy. But when you can start to add the playmaking, the 2-man pick and roll, the continuity stuff, you can't be bothered. And this is what I mean by when they went to the fourth quarter, they being Portland, and were compromised, and they had to put, because they were down 11, 12 points, 10 points, they had to put their offensive lineup out on the court. So now you have Damian Lillard and Simons in your backcourt. But even if you only had one, let's say you have one good defender. Most teams try to put one good defender with their elite offensive player. If you do that, and let's say, okay, we're going to put the good defender on Murray. Well, Denver's really good at forcing switches, moving the pieces around, and then getting into the 2-man game. Maybe you don't even have to do that. Maybe you just say, oh, you're going to put Simons on KCP. Well, he also knows how to run 2-man game with Jokic. Not as good as Murray, but good enough to make this guy like pay for being on the court. And that's why I watched that play, and I watched all in the third quarter. You just saw them going back and forth to each other. Even though he missed the layups, I look at it and I go, that's a chemistry that they're 30 games into playing with each other, 40 games into playing with each other. By the time you get to 100 games, those 2 are going to be like really, really elite. Bruce Brown was hitting his floater in this game. Blazers tried a zone. I mean, the zone at the end was kind of a Hail Mary by them. They couldn't get anything going. They were getting beat like a drum on that end. And then few things are better than Michael Porter catching fire, especially with Jokic there, because he catches fire and he hits a couple threes. And then Jokic just starts calling his number. And he had an interesting one, the last one, where he hits him in the corner, where Jokic, and I'm telling you, Jokic thinks Porter's the best shooter in the world. Because with Porter, and I don't think he does this a whole lot with other guys. I've seen it a few times. But with Porter, whenever Porter's on fire, he does it every time. He makes a move. He throws it to the corner. He perfectly knew. By the way, Damian Lillard was on him in this quarter. This was part of why Porter had a Porter quarter, is they tried to hide Lillard on him, and it's like, you can't do that. Michael Porter's too good. But Jokic had one where he finds him in the corner and then doesn't even turn around. He just starts running back. It was like that's good. Porter open in the corner, automatic. That's good. MPJ doesn't quite know how to set himself up by screening. I've talked about this a lot, but Jamal Murray is one of the best screeners in the NBA, especially from the guard position. And a lot of why he gets open off of Jokic is because he's really good at screening Jokic's guy. He's good at screening off ball on Aaron Gordon's guy in ways that compromises the defense. And then by the time they fight through the screen or switch or whatever, then he's already set himself up. Michael Porter still has to read this. And part of it is being willing for contact, willing to set screens. Part of this is having the strength to be able to set the right type of screens. But most of it is about reading the court properly. Are you setting the screen on the hip? Are you setting it behind, like fully in the back? Are you switching it at the last second to jump to the other side? Are you slipping it early? Are you slipping it late? Are you holding it an extra second? Those things are all things that over time and with reps you read, and with a lot of film study. And I think Porter doesn't quite read those. He could add, in my opinion, 6 points to his game just by getting better at reading the screens. Eubanks actually has really good rim protection. I'm kind of impressed with him. I thought he was a good player a couple years back, but he's a guy that is like one of those low. I think Eubanks is a good player. If he was your backup center or something like that, I think he would actually be pretty good. He's not going to guard Jokic. If Nurkic gets in foul trouble, then you're kind of screwed. But I think he's a pretty good player, and he had some good rim protection against that second unit. And then to close the game, Denver gets a 10-point lead. I'm sorry, if you're not an elite defensive team, or just an elite team in general, and Denver's up 10 in the fourth, pack it in. Might as well start taking it easy, because Denver starts going to their closing sets in that moment. Put KCP in a quarter. Put Michael Porter in a quarter. This was before Jamal Murray even checks in. You got Gordon, Jokic, and Bruce Brown on the court. That three-man game, there's just too many. You don't want to switch any of them. AG's guy doesn't want to guard Jokic. Jokic's guy doesn't want to guard Bruce Brown, and vice versa. Like, you have this, you're so compromised. And then, oh, by the way, you're putting two guys who shoot 50% from the corners in each quarter, and it's just barbecue chicken. Denver got exactly what they wanted down the stretch. Portland tried to go to their offensive unit to close, and Denver just scored every single time. And then, by the way, Denver's defense, I thought, down the stretch was also impressive. Like, even though they didn't need to be great, they stepped up just a little bit. And once again, I thought Porter made some great, impactful defensive plays just by using his length. Damian Lillard got him switched out onto an island one time, started to size him up, and then ended up passing away because Porter was just so big he could sag off of him. Dame likes to do the little sidestep three, like a lot of players do, but him in particular. And that's harder to do against tall players who are already so tall they don't have to jump. They can just kind of use their length. All in all, I thought this was a great game from Denver. They played connected basketball. I do want to see their defense go up. Tonight they've got Minnesota on the second night of a back-to-back. I think this is the second of 3 times they play them on the second night of a back-to-back. It's unfair. It's a little bit of a bummer. But there is something cool about tonight. Number one, you can extend your streak. You're at 7. The highest win streak in the Denver Nuggets era, or the Nikola Jokic era, is 8 games. They've never had a win streak longer than 8 games. You can tie that tonight and go into a Friday game with a chance to set a new record, get a new streak. And by the way, streaks are important. You can win. Few teams win at more than a 55-win pace. Like, good teams, they get at a 55-win pace. What makes teams win more than that, which again is rare, but what gets teams to win more than that are streaks. You play at a 55-win pace throughout the entire season, except for that one time when you had a 13-game win streak. You broke from the trend for like a 3-week stretch. You won 15 games there. And then that's how you get to 59 games, 60 games, or 58, whatever it is. So Denver is in that moment right now. I don't know that we can expect another 7-game win streak. You'd love to see it. But this is with all the home games, and they've had a little bit of luck here and there. Ball bounced their way in that Orlando game. Like, that's what it takes. Now you have an opportunity to extend that to 7, 8, 9, 10 games. And that's how you end up with a number 1 seed, or at the very least a number 2 seed. So a big opportunity here. It is a division game. And then lastly, Nikola is 6 assists away from tying Alex English for the all-time assist leader. All-time assist leader in Denver Nuggets history. 7, he'll pass him. He's averaging 10, so you should expect that he will probably get that. And I think it's cool that Tim Conley will be in attendance for tonight's game, obviously on the other side. But the guy that drafted him, the guy that brought him over, we'll get to kind of witness that. And I think it will be a cool thing should Jokic be able to do it. So big game, second night of a back-to-back, got to dig in. But I like where the Denver Nuggets at, and I hope they continue this. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll have another episode. I don't know if I'm solo again. If so, it'll probably be another one that's like later in the afternoon. But we'll see. Maybe Matt Moore's back, and we'll get one in tomorrow morning. Thanks so much. Hit that like button on the way out. We'll see you next time.